You know, people say you either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain. And unfortunately, today for Steve Erceg, he died a hero. Steve Erceg was a guy that me personally and a lot of other fans of the UFC really liked. There was a lot to like about his game. He had really good striking. He was a very, very high level anti grappler. We saw what he was able to do to Pantoja and arguably won that fight, or at the very least, made it a very competitive fight. But unfortunately, ever since that loss to Pantoja, Steve Erceg's career has just been going downhill. He lost to KKF, who really exposed a real deficiency in Erceg's game. And unfortunately, that deficiency never really improved. Steve Erceg has a huge deficiency to his game, and that's dealing with giant overhands. We saw it in this fight against Temirov, who isn't really good at all, if we're being honest. He just threw giant overhands, overswinging, would have gassed himself out badly if the fight got out of the first round. But unfortunately for Steve Erceg, he just can't deal with those giant overhands. He got caught with about 3 or 4, and he didn't get TKO'd tonight. He went out. And it's unfortunate because you would think for a fighter that is pretty high level, like a Steve Erceg, who has had a lot of success in moments of his UFC career, you would think a guy like that would be able to make improvements to an area of his game that just such a deficiency. But unfortunately, he's been never able to make improvements to that. KKF knocked him out with giant overhands and multiple times landing those giant overhands. Even a guy in Ode Osborne, although it wasn't the same sort of giant overhands as the other guys threw, he also was able to land big shots against Steve. Now, Steve won that fight, but he had a very difficult first round, and he got hurt badly in that first round. But it's the same story once again. Steve Erceg's a good fighter. He's going to beat a lot of guys, but guys that have a lot of power and just throw giant, huge overhand rights or overhand lefts are going to catch Steve Erceg probably every time. Maybe it won't catch him the first time. Maybe it won't catch him the second time, but in the course of a 3-round fight, Steve's going to get caught and he's just going to go out. It's as simple as that. Steve has a deficiency where he always has one of his hands very, very low by his waist, really, all the time, even when he's in close in the pocket. And he's just so susceptible to getting caught with big shots. I think he kind of uses his shoulder as a guard, but because he stands up so straight, it doesn't guard you as well with your shoulder, only using your shoulder. And that's been the biggest issue for Steve Erceg. And it's unfortunate, but that's kind of the reality of the situation. So at this point, I am officially declaring Steve Erceg will no longer be in title contention. I actually kind of felt that way for a while, to be honest, but this is kind of the final nail in the coffin for him. And even at this point, I don't think Steve is ever going to get back into the top 6 or maybe even the top 7 of the flyweight division. Whenever he goes up against a guy with big power and who's willing to throw big shots, Erceg's just going to go out. It feels like that's kind of the reality of the situation for Erceg, and it is unfortunate because, as I said before, in this fight against Temirov, if he got out of the first round, I'm pretty confident Steve would have won. Temirov was throwing everything into those shots, really looked like he was going to gas himself out, but we just never really got far enough to actually see if something like that would have happened. So I guess good win for Temirov. But as I said before, he sucks. He's not a good fighter. If you're that untechnical for the flyweight division, you're in trouble. You can get away with that at the higher weight classes if you have ridiculous power. But at a lower weight class like flyweight, these guys are going to pick you apart. And I think we're going to start to see that as Temirov kind of goes throughout the rankings and starts to fight higher level competition. It worked today against Erceg, but it will not work against some of the higher level fighters at the weight class, like a Manel Kape, for example. Manel Kape would do bad things to Temirov. But that's kind of the situation. That's the reality. I do apologize to all my Steve-ophiles out there. I'm one of the bigger ones. I'm a big Steve Erceg fan before this fight. I'm a big Steve Erceg fan after this fight. But the reality of the situation is Steve Erceg is just not going to be that great because of this one deficiency. And it is what it is. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. You guys agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Where's Steve Erceg going to go after that? But until the next time, I'll see you boys in the next one. Peace out.